Are you serious? Yeah, that was the response I got from my buddy when I told him the most valuable tool on my farm is probably only about 500 bucks. Hey guys, Ben here with Stringer Bridge Farm. You ever thought about what's the most important thing you have? What's the most critical thing to your grazing operation on your farm? Well, a friend of mine with about 10 acres asked me that the other day, and it sparked some pretty interesting conversation. He's looking to just get started with grazing some animals, and he was asking me because I started with a smaller piece of property where we were running some animals on about 30 acres of property with very minimal amount of equipment and infrastructure. Now we've kind of moved up to a little bit bigger operations. We're still very small, I guess, in the big scheme of things, but definitely had some interesting conversation and provoked some thought. And I think the obvious topics that came up were more around some of the bigger things, equipment and whatnot. For instance, you see right here, I've got a four-wheeler. I use this thing like crazy. I use it to corral animals. I use it to carry fencing supplies. I mean, it's just a crucial piece of equipment, but the reality is I actually ran cows and sheep for multiple years without one. A little bit of fencing supplies you can carry by hand, a small piece of property like what he has and what I started with. You really don't have very far to go. Pickup trucks, things like that seem to work, wagons, carts. So ultimately, like the ATV or side-by-side, something that's nice to have, but kind of my advice to him was I wouldn't start with that. I think there's something even more important. So when you talk to somebody who's new to property ownership or fooling with animals or anything of that nature, one of the first things that always comes up, everybody seems to think, oh man, I gotta have one of those, is a tractor. And one thing about tractors, they're not budget friendly. So kind of the advice I gave him is I wouldn't put that very high on my list. 10 acres, you can manage several different ways. I did have a tractor when we started with the 30 acres, but it was also about, I don't remember the exact year, early 60s Ford 3000 that the guy just left with the property when we bought it. And I fixed it up to get it into usable shape. I bought a bush hog for it, and that's about all we had as far as tractor or large equipment when we started. So our conversation kind of quickly shifted to the most important thing to have on your farm to maybe more like the most impactful thing on a farm. So another critical piece of equipment we talked about was some handling equipment for cattle especially. Now sheep, I got away with absolutely no handling equipment other than a couple of fencing panels that I'd move around. But cows, they're a lot bigger. They can be more dangerous unintentionally just because of their size. And handling equipment is one of those things where I think you can go a lot cheaper than what we have here. So we've got an Arrowquip squeeze with a palpation cage. It's got all kind of stuff on it that's very convenient, but that's kind of how I place it, as convenient and some safety. But you could get away with if I was really just starting out, not knowing if it was something I was going to stick with, for about $1,000 you can get a decent alley system like this. I mean, I think I paid $1,100 or $1,200 maybe for this with a gate on it, and you could get just a head gate on the end of these things, and you can safely handle your cattle. All the other things on here generally are convenience, not necessarily safety. And I think if I look back, I probably had one animal die because I did not have a squeeze chute, and that was a big unruly bull. I couldn't get a vet out here without a squeeze chute. He didn't care. if I said it was a calm animal or not. Ultimately, he gave me some medications to try, but without a squeeze chute, we really couldn't handle the bull like we had done cows and steers with panels and different gate corners and stuff. So ultimately, we did end up losing that bull to a bad infection that we just could not treat because we couldn't safely handle him. But yeah, equipment like this, I still classify as more of a convenience. You can get by with a set of panels for, I'm gonna say maybe 2,000 bucks, something like that. Whereas, you know, a decent squeeze chute, you're gonna pay 5, 10, 20, almost as much as you want. But like this setup, I think total was about $10,000. I know you guys probably remember, but we had this cow right here who was rejecting her calf. So the convenience thing you saw right there, where I was able to pin this cow, squeeze her down, allow her calf to nurse, and ultimately that saved me a ton of headache, because if I didn't have this setup, I probably wouldn't have pushed so hard to get her to accept this calf, because squeeze chute made it easy. She accepted the calf, and now I'm probably 2 or 3 days from putting these back in with the herd of cows, and I won't have to bottle feed or tend to this calf. So, you know, just another case in point of the equipment generally is convenient and make life easier, but I don't classify it as one of the more impactful things we've purchased on our farm. The most impactful item is actually far cheaper and simpler, so we'll get to that one in just a second. So I'm sure by now all of you guys have probably figured out the point I was trying to make here, and it's this little white ribbon right in front of me. By far the most impactful thing we've got on our farm as far as equipment is our electric fencing setup. So we got all portable solar electric chargers. I've got different kinds of ribbon and twine. I like these this wider ribbon style when I'm in areas where the deer want to knock the fence down more. The deer can see it easier. But ultimately, electric fencing allows me to graze these areas outside of my pastures. Is probably one of the two big things. So, you know, this area around our pond is a spot that's not within our fencing. You know, when the weather's nice, everybody likes to come and fish and hang out around the pond. I really don't want it fenced in in the dead of winter like this, when we need grass for these cows to graze and all. You could see we've got all this beautiful ryegrass growing in here, and I can graze these cows around this and get several days of usage out of it 2 or 3 times during the winter and spring without having to fence this in with permanent fence. The second big thing is, like I think all of you are probably aware, you've seen in my previous videos, that we rotate our cows continuously. And so the electric fencing allows me to not have to put up tons of expensive permanent fencing like barbed wire or woven wire or any other kind of wire like that. But I can move these portable electric reels around, and I can subdivide all my pastures. So I think if I look at my ultimate goal, that's about the size of pastures I have. I'm breaking them into about 10 to 20 acre pastures that I have a center hot wire, and I can subdivide them with this electric. So right now I only have 30 head. It's pretty easy to go in there and put a cross fence of electric, cut it down to 2 or 3 acres, and keep my impact high on the ground and my rotations fast, my rest periods long. So, you know, my buddy was a little surprised. It was, you know, I think anytime somebody's new to farming or grazing or anything like this, they tend to think of the really big things. You know, he was kind of stuck on tractor and four-wheeler, and I need discs and all these other things. I need squeeze chutes. But the reality is, I grazed animals for quite a few years. Just I actually didn't even have permanent fence. So when I first had my sheep, I was all paranoid. So you can see I use these cheap little posts right here. They've got 4 clips on them. I would put 4 strands. Looked like a pretty substantial fence, but it was still really cheap, really easy to fool with, and you know, I had great results very quickly with rotational grazing, utilizing these inexpensive materials, and they're very effective. So you know, probably the hardest animal to keep in a fence is Now, he's a young guy right here, but this right here, a bull. Bulls, they don't have a whole lot of respect for fences, but man, you put a bull in a fence with a hot wire right on the inside of that fence, and it will shut down some of the craziest bulls I've seen, where they hate getting shocked with that little fence charger. So it'll definitely contain bulls. So this guy right here, we had our first calf the other day, so we're gonna separate bulls. That'll probably be our next video. So stay tuned, and I'll show you all how we're gonna go through and sort these couple bulls out of the herd and separate them. So anyway, thank you guys. See you on the next one.